So when I look at NAMA, and again, I have, there's several proposals out there when you say how to fix NAMA. I don't care for the name. You can call it NAMA again, so I'll stick to that. My idea is that what you do is you, first of all, look at the problem from the point of view who pays and who benefits. If the taxpayer pays, taxpayer is the first one to be protected in the system. If that's the case, what you do the Swedish exercise. You force the banks to take realistic write-downs. They will become instantaneously insolvent by their own measure, not by IMF measure. By the way, by the IMF Article 4 consultation paper measure, they are already insolvent, all of them, because it's based on the cash flow. Okay. Now, you force them to take write-downs. You force them to plug the resulting hole in capital by destroying the shareholder value first, the junior bondholders second, and then go and negotiate with senior bondholders. And when the senior bondholders are against the wall, they will negotiate. They will agree to some sort of a combination of spot for equity, some pay down on some of the bonds, and maybe restructuring of other bonds. What you left with, the taxpayer plugs. When the taxpayer plugs that hole, the taxpayer plugs it not by writing them a blank check and saying, here, have that, come back 20 years from now if you have a problem with something, okay? No, you say, here's the check, give me the equity in exchange for it, at that price. And yes, in the end, that transaction will mean that someone else, not the current shareholders, will own the banks. Who those will be is a crucial issue because we have the problem of nationalization. In my view, it should be a trust. A trust holding shares that belong to all of us as residents of this country, tax residents, so you don't have the tax exiles out there as well. They don't benefit, they don't get to claim anything because they're not paying anything. Plus some private equity which you can secure, such as Canadians, Russian sovereign fund. I mean, there's plenty of those. There's a huge amount of appetite for risk right now in the market. There are people looking right now for the investment opportunities. Give them the right price and they'll step in and they'll buy into the Irish bank story as well. You have also at the same time the loans which you bought in that equity swap as well. Okay? Those loans and those shares are held in escrow account, in a trust, for the benefit of the shareholders, who are, again, the private equity guys, some bondholders who might come in as well, in exchange for their bonds written down, and also, you have some, and you have also the taxpayers. Okay? That trust holds it and manages the shares. It doesn't manage the actual loans. The banks continue to manage the loans. Now, you need to address the problem of how does the bank treat the two loans, one belonging to itself, one belonging to NAMA, on its own books and within its own management structure. You create a Chinese wall. You set up within each bank a separate division which manages the loans that are administered to NAMA. That division's performance is fully benchmarked against the rest of the bank. So in other words, they can't generate losses on that side of the book. They have to do it exactly as good as the rest of the bank is doing with its own loans. So your incentives are purely aligned. You pay them a flat management fee of 1%, the standard stockbroker style fee for doing that, for managing those loans, and done. You know your downside, you know your financing structure, you know your costs into the perpetuity. And from that on, you start managing those loans and those shares by gradually dispersing them into the market. Now, in my view, 10, 15 years from now, the bank's shares, the NAMA shares, okay, in the banks, will be back in the market. They will be floated. But they will never cease to float fully. Some of it will be always there. The reason why it has to be held in the trust is because I don't want the replay of the Russian voucher situation when the individuals were given shares and they ran straight into the market and sold them all at the depressed prices. So in other words, kind of gradual market respect and the transaction flow. Okay? What you get then under the NAMA trust is at no point in time the government of this country will own a single share in a single bank. Instead, it will be a public trust which owns it. And the government is there as a guardian of that trust, as a guarantor on the legal side of that trust, and nothing more. So the problem of nationalization, as the opponents of the critics of NAMA, the government itself, Alan Ahern's of this world, always like to say that there is no plan out there which avoids nationalization. There is. Here it is. It's purely private enterprise. Now, the fact that they can't come up with one themselves is not really a reason to say that it doesn't exist and they could have listened to us. In fact, actually, we do speak to them through the newspapers. They don't talk to us directly. which is the most probably bizarre part, as Brian has said. What the price and the structure should be, what the haircuts should be taken and all, that's a secondary issue. We can work that out afterwards. But from my point of view, the most important part is the actual superstructure you create. And in that, the most important issue is, do you protect the shareholders in the banks and the bondholders in the banks? And automatically, as a result of it, soak your taxpayers? Or do you do what every responsible democracy has done in the Western world since the foundation of democratic state? Soak those who are paid to take risk first, and protect the interest of those who are completely innocent in the entire pyramid scheme that we have built here in terms of the banking sector. Not a single democracy in the Western world has chosen to put the foreign bondholders or domestic shareholders ahead of domestic taxpayers. Ireland is doing that right now as we speak. It will be a unique exercise. And even if you think about the worst case scenario, the worst outlay that we've been touted to us, thrown out to us as the default, the Irish government default. Well, let me give you a few examples of defaults. Argentina defaults about every 20 years on its bonds. And about every 21st year, you can go to the markets and see Argentinian debt traded. No problem. They have not had a problem with financing. In fact, most of the economists would agree on finance side as well, on macrofinance side would agree that probably the problem with Argentina is that they have too much supply by the markets of liquidity. The markets should stop giving them that money because they'll default again. Okay? Russian default, which happened in 1998, has been fully corrected by 2001. Russia had all its ratings restored. It had a full access to the bond markets. It actually had the bond markets access the day after the default as well. Just the pricing was quite a bit horrific. But by 2001, 3 years from then, Russians fully recovered. The same with Southeast Asian crisis. The same in every case of default. In fact, there is out a paper out there, which I think, if I'm correct, it was either ECB or OECD did it. BIS, Bank for International Settlements, which compares the similar episodes of the corrections in property markets and in financial markets, so the bubbles bursting, with the scenarios where there was a sovereign default and where there wasn't a sovereign default. And guess what? Where there was a sovereign default, where the countries honestly came out and said, look, we're not going to powder over the wounds. Yes, we are insolvent. The corrections took shorter time. Do you remember the average? I don't remember. It was like 8 months or something like that?
It was 18 months.
18 months, yeah. 18 months shorter correction. So the government is really creating the smoke and mirrors for us. And my view is that I was asked recently, what should the Green Party do about that? And I went on the record and I said, in that scenario, just vote no. Send them back to the drawing board. Let them come back to us. They are being paid hundreds of thousands euro more than their counterparties in Europe and in the United States. They can't be expected to produce something better. Something at least half decent better than what they came to us with. Anyways, I'll be happy to answer the questions if I can take just quickly a break and just do this, an interview, and I'll come back and we can do the questions if that's okay.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
I think what we'll do